everyone. Okay, welcome to Theatre 3. Dina Dwyer-Owens is the executive co-chair of the Dwyer Group. America also knows her for participating in Emmy-winning hit reality show Undercover Boss, and the first ever special episode, Undercover Boss Epic Bosses. Dina leads by example and credits a growing team for the franchise family she presides over today. Dina is a certified franchise executive with more than 30 years of industry experience, having grown up in the Dwyer Group. That business now includes 7 franchise brands and more than 1,600 franchisees around the world through direct franchising and master license agreements. These include AirServe, Glass Doctor, Mr. Appliance, Mr. Router, The Ground Guys, and 3 franchise brands exhibiting here today, The Drain Doctor, Mr. Electric, and Rainbow International. Collectively, those service brands make more than 2 million customer calls a year and account for almost 1 billion in system-wide sales. In 2010, Dina served as the International Franchise Association as a chair in Washington, D.C. She also spearheaded the reintroduction of the IFA's VetFran program in 2001, which now includes some 480 franchisors that offer franchising financial incentives to veterans of the US Armed Forces. To date, more than 4,200 military veterans now own a franchise through the VetFran program. In 2002, the IFA awarded Dina the Bonnie Levine Award, the IFA's highest award for women who mentor other women and advance the careers of women in franchising. In 2005, Dina launched the Live Rich campaign to promote the Dwyer Group code of values and the themes of respect, integrity, customer focus, and having fun in the process of a growing company. She also released her book, Live Rich, How to Build Success in Your Company and Your Life with the Proven Code of Values. Dina is a regular speaker for how to live rich within her company and to audiences all around the world. Dina is married to Mike Owens and they have 2 wonderful children together.
Headquartered in Waco, Texas, the Dwyer Group is the parent company to 7 franchise brands specializing in home and vehicle maintenance, including Mr. Router, Mr. Appliance, The Grounds Guys, and Mr. Electric. Overseeing the 10,000 employees and in charge of running this $800 million business is one woman.
My name is Dina Dwyer-Owens, and I'm the chairwoman and CEO of the Dwyer Group. The Dwyer Group is a collection of franchise companies that serve the homeowner and small business owner. The Dwyer Group was founded by my father, Don Dwyer, in 1981 with 36 franchise locations. And today we have about 1,560 locations. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We have an extremely special culture here. Okay, so why don't we kick off with our code of values? We live our code of values by treating others as we'd like to be treated.
We live our code of values by responding in a timely fashion.
The Dwyer Group has always had a code of values, and it started with my father's vision.
We live a code of values by asking clarifying questions if we disagree or do not understand.
Basically, it's 4 categories: respect, integrity, customer focus, and one of my favorites. We live our code of values by having fun in the process.
Please welcome to the stage Dina Dwyer-Owens.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for showing up here. And I've got to make one clear distinction as we kick off. In the UK, we do not use the name Mr. Router. We use the name Drain Doctor, represented here by our master licensees, Freddie and Jan Mittman. So I know that that name doesn't go well, Mr. Router in the UK. So I wanted to make sure I pointed out that we are the Drain Doctor here. So a question for everyone. How many of you are living rich? By a show of hands. Anybody living rich? Okay, you're not sure what I mean by that. Some of you know. Oh, we've got some cheaters in the back of the room. Some of you know. But when I ask that question, people think, does she mean, am I wealthy? Because a lot of us want to have a lot of money, right? Some of us like to act like we have a lot of money. But how many of us really live rich? And at the Dwyer Group, living rich is really all about living with respect, integrity, customer focus, and having fun in the process. Is that how we say it here in the UK? Not process. They told me that was poor English. That's how we say it in the US, but in the process. We believe that when you live rich, something wonderful happens. Because when you live rich, which is about treating people with respect and dignity, you build very strong relationships. And when you build strong relationships, those relationships multiply themselves. And when they multiply themselves, depending on if you have a good quality product or service, that eventually leads to wealth, which is the financial part of it, right? We're all in business to make money, but we believe it should start with people and treating people properly. If you do that well, everything else seems to fall into place, again, as long as you have a proper quality or service. So to step back in history for a moment, Don Dwyer, my father, founded the company in 1981 with Rainbow International, another one of our brands here in the United Kingdom. And Don was very clear about the kind of leader he wanted to be. And it's not because he was the smartest guy around. He was smart enough to study other great leaders. And he said, I want to be the best Don Dwyer that I can be. And what have these other great leaders done that I should mentor? And he decided that every one of the great leaders he studied, whether they were military leaders, business leaders, church leaders, is everyone had a clear set of values. They knew what they stood for, and they made sure that anybody they touched also knew what they stood for. So when Don founded the company in '81, he started it with his code of values, a very clear belief system. No matter who you were, if you were doing business with Don in any way, shape, or form, you understood what his values were. Unfortunately, Don died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 60 in 1994, a shock to our organization. We had just taken the company public in 1993, and he died in 1994. If he were here, he would say going public killed him. He and I were great friends, so he would laugh about that, I promise you, because he said it took too much control away. That's not why he died. He didn't spend enough time in life enjoying life. He worked too hard, too long, and didn't rejuvenate enough. But the truth is, he left us with a wonderful legacy, a wonderful culture at the Dwyer Group that we knew we had to maintain. But the big question was, when he died, is how do we maintain this culture when the visionary, the driver, is no longer with us? We knew it had to do with the code of values. So we said, why don't we take Don's original code of values and operationalize them, put them into a format that we could hold ourselves accountable to and hold one another, so that it didn't take one person to say you didn't live the value today or you did live the value today. Instead, create a set of standards that are very high to hold ourselves accountable to. And I will guarantee you something today. We are not a perfect company. At the Dwyer Group, we're a company made up of wonderful human beings, but we're human, and we do make mistakes. But we work hard to live up to this high standard, because I think it's better to have a very high standard, a high bar to work hard to live up to, and maybe not make it every day, than have a low standard and reach it every day. Would you agree? It's better to reach for a high standard. So we took Don's original values, created a set of standards that we committed to living by. But the first thing we had to do was to talk to our 125 employees at the time, back in 1994, and say, we know that Don's no longer here to hold us accountable to the values. We came up with a solution that we believe will work, but employees, we need your help. We gave them a little plastic laminated card that had the original values on one side and the new values on the other. And we said, for 90 days, we're going to play a game. We want you to study these new values, because we're learning them too as an executive team, and anytime you find us violating a value, we want your feedback. And we're from Waco, Texas. Many of you probably don't know where Waco, Texas is, but we do things a little goofy sometimes in Waco. We asked our employees to beep us whenever we violated a value. So they really went to work at studying the values, because employees loved catching their bosses doing something wrong. So it forced them to really study the values. And anytime they caught one of us violating one of the values, all they had to do was go beep, right? So they might be walking down the hall and hear one of our team members, executive team members, use profanity, and all they would have to do is go beep, and we would acknowledge and hopefully not go, oh, shh, and repeat what we shouldn't have said in the first place, but instead acknowledge that we just messed up and violated one of our own values. So during that 90-day period of time, do you know Roadrunner? Yes? What's his famous line? Beep, 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 right? So for 90 days at the Dwyer Group, we were being beeped right and left. We were so bad at living the values. And instead of getting depressed, as a management team, we said, what an opportunity. We thought we were a pretty good company already. What if we really reached the bar up a little higher? How much better could we be as a company? So we brought the team back together after that 90-day beep game, and we asked them, do you think that the values are the right approach? And they said, absolutely. They actually added a value that was even the hardest one that we had on the list, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The other thing we knew as a team is that we had to surround ourselves with people that aligned with our values. Right? In business, we have a choice. We can work with people that we like, that live by the same type of values that we do, or we could work with people that we don't like, and that probably won't last very long. So we decided we'd rather align ourselves with team members that we like, that believe in the same values that we believe in, recognizing that we're not perfect. We all have strengths and weaknesses, but if we could all agree to live by these same rules, we'd have a much better experience with one another. The other thing we decided, as with any good franchise organization, is we needed to systemize our values. I don't know about the UK, but I know about North America. In North America, 95% of the companies that had a code of values or a code of ethics do nothing with them once they're written. How many of you had a code of ethics or a code of values? Anybody had that written in their businesses? Just a handful? How many of you have worked for companies that have a code of values or a code of ethics? Anybody? And how many of those companies live those daily? Only one hand remained up. So it's pretty true, I guess, in the United Kingdom as well, that only 95% of the companies, or 5%, actually do anything with their values once they're written. So what great franchise companies do is they create systems for success. And we said if we create a system around our values where we talk about it, anytime we have a meeting of 3 or more of our team members, we're more apt to succeed, right? So anytime we met, 3 or more of us, our employees, our franchisees, even our vendors, we would begin the meetings by reciting our code of values. We've been doing that for 16 years now. And I can be in 6 meetings in a day, and we don't always just recite the values. Sometimes we'll tell a code of values story. Maybe one of our franchisees has had a wonderful experience with a customer, and we've heard the feedback. So we'll talk about something great that's happened because we lived our values. Or maybe we just surveyed our employees an opportunity to get better. So maybe we'll talk about that particular value and how we can do better. But the point is we had to create a system around the values in order to get better and better and better every day. And then I asked our team members to also internalize the values. I think memorizing them is a wonderful thing. It takes a lot of time because there's a lot of them, but it forces you to really get to know the values when you memorize them. So my goal is to have, I'd love 100% of our team members to be able to recite the values by heart, with heart. I don't think I'll ever get there. I'm at about 53% today from our 500 employees. But the good news is if you were to walk around our campuses, you would find that people understand what our values are and the difference they can make in their lives, not only at work, but also at home. You can't do this well at work and it not transcend into your home life as well. So Undercover Boss, how many Undercover Boss fans in the room? Anybody like? Oh, several of you, very good. So you know how that show works. How many of you believe that they came banging on my door to have me on the show? Oh, you're so smart. Only one raised her hand. No, in fact, they didn't know who the Dwyer Group was. 2 of my friends had been on previous episodes, and I thought, now wait a second. If they can be an Undercover Boss, why can't I? And when you want something in life, what do you have to do sometimes? You have to ask, don't you? But we did our homework first. Before we knocked on their door, we did our homework. What we learned is that out of 36 shows that had aired, only 2 of the bosses even mentioned the word values. Pretty consistent with what we were talking about. Very few companies have clear values that they execute on. We also knew that the viewers were tired of all the white guys as bosses. They wanted more women, and they wanted more people of color. So we did our homework. We approached the studio, told them our story. We've got a woman running a male-dominated business. They're celebrating their 30th anniversary, and Dina would like to go undercover to find out, are the code of values truly making it to the front line, to the people that are touching you and your homes and your businesses? That was my mission for going undercover. I knew nothing about who I'd be meeting with on this journey, so it truly was an undercover experience. They went out and vetted over 200 of our employees to make the decision on who I would meet with. So from one day to the next, I didn't know until we got to the airport, and they would say, tomorrow we're going to Atlanta, Georgia, and you're going to be a plumber. pretty interesting. So the very first experience I had while undercover was at a Mr. Rooter, remember that's Drain Doctor in the UK, location in Atlanta, Georgia. And here's what happened.
As we do with every meeting, let's go ahead and get started with our code of values. On your feet. We live our code of values by.
Never saying anything about anyone that we would not say to him or her.
We live our code of values by.
Asking clarifying questions if we disagree or do not understand.
The code of values is clearly part of what we do, but the presentation of it was new.
At ease, gentlemen.
So what about the lady in the bad wig? I guess he didn't notice me, right? So the good news is that the first visit I had, the franchisee had practiced reviewing the values at the beginning of their major meetings. Now, we don't ask our franchisees to do it military, but they can. Most of his employees, his plumbers, were actually former military. So it made perfect sense for him to do that in that format. As you could tell, they were pretty much in line with it. So what I'd like to do today is get you involved by reading the values out loud with me, if that's okay. So when we read a value, we always read the affirmation at the top. We live our code of values by, because it tells our minds that this is how we do it here, and then we read the value in full. Are you game? You willing to play and read out loud with me? Okay, so together, we live our code of values by treating others as we'd like to be treated. So my first job was with Wayne the plumber, and I had to treat him with respect. So what do you like?
Mr. Rooter's kind of sentimental to me. My father worked for him before I ever came along. But then I take into account everything that actually goes on with this company behind the scenes, and there's a lot of misery. You know, we're paid on commission. You know, you expect you made $1,000 this week, you get your check and it's $500. You go to the office, say, hey, y'all said you weren't going to take my material out. The accountant would say, that's the way it's supposed to be, and no.
Okay, so I don't know what the temperature is in Celsius, but it was 108 degrees that day in that garage. But when that employee was telling me how unhappy he was about his pay, it felt a lot hotter than even 108 degrees. So here's a young man who was concerned about his pay. Let's do the next value and talk about this. We live our code of values by listening with the intent to understand what is being said and acknowledging that what is said is important to the speaker. Do you think that Wayne's paycheck was important to him? You better believe it. So I had to listen with the intent to understand that that was very important to him. The next value, we live our code of values by responding in a timely fashion. I actually excused myself from the filming because I knew this was going to make it to national television and I had to respond timely. I called up Miss Mary Thompson, who is the president of Mr. Rooter in the United States, and I said, Mary, this young man feels like he's being taken advantage of, that his paycheck is not right. Would you please get with the franchisee and make sure he meets with him this evening to explain the commission structure? She said right away. She called up Bob, our franchisee in Atlanta, and said, Bob, you need to meet with this gentleman tonight. And Bob met not only with him that night, but all of the technicians. Sat them down and explained the commission program in great detail until they could basically recite it back. Because the mistake he had made is he had a very complicated commission program that the technicians couldn't understand. They were great technicians, but they weren't mathematicians, right? The next value, we live our code of values by speaking calmly and respectfully without profanity or sarcasm. Do you think that Wayne the plumber was respectful in sharing with me his concern? I thought he was. He didn't use profanity, although during the episode he did use the word shady to describe our company. And that felt profane to me, right? Who wants to be called shady, especially on national television? But he was very calm and he was very respectful. So we encourage our team members and our franchisees and their employees to speak calmly and respectfully without profanity, which is difficult. We're plumbers, we're electricians, we're appliance repair people, and sometimes we have a foul mouth. So we have to work very hard to clean up that language and also watch our sarcasm, because if you're with your buddies and you're using sarcasm, it's normally okay because you understand they're just teasing. But if you're with a customer and you're being sarcastic, that's not okay, right? Because there's usually a dig with every bit of sarcasm. Next, we live our code of values by acknowledging everyone is right from their own perspective. Was Wayne right from his perspective? something wrong with the pay, the way he saw it. Was Bob, the franchisee, right from his perspective? He had hired a labor attorney to create the commission program. He was right as well. So we say everybody's got the right to their own perspective, but sometimes we need to come together and try to understand one another's perspective better. So Wayne and Bob did that, and they got a much better understanding. And today, well, he ended up working for another franchisee much closer to his home, but they still left with a better understanding. Next, we live our code of values by making only agreements we are willing, able, and intend to keep. So while undercover, I had no idea I'd be meeting with a franchisee. And I thought for sure that my cover would be blown because I meet every new franchisee. In this case, he clearly did not know who I was, because when you become a franchisee, you agree to following our systems for success, right? You're there to build the brand for your benefit, but for the benefit of the whole network. Here's what happened when I met with Brock.
The franchise, when they spoke of their things, was the 14 steps.
So what are 14 steps?
It's basically how someone should act, or it has a lot to do with integrity and respect. All those are things that we should have learned in kindergarten. I'm more focused on the business aspect.
So you think there's just too many steps?
Yeah. I know our customers probably in the back of their mind are saying, what in the heck are these people doing?
I have to help them understand step 1 to step 14. The approach to the customer's home, putting the doormat down, putting the shoe covers on. I learned from my father how important that is to the customer experience that we're creating. They're not hard.
So we're going to talk about the next value and then discuss Brock for a moment. We live our code of values by communicating any potentially broken agreements at the first appropriate opportunity to all parties concerned. So he did not recognize me, it was obvious, right? Because he basically made a confession that made it to national television that he was not following the systems. So here's a guy who agreed to follow our systems, did not follow the systems, and then he was angry when the show aired and it showed that he wasn't following the systems. The truth is, he's a very good franchisee, and he was following 12 of the 14 frontline steps, as we call them, but he wasn't following all 14. Guess what happened to his business after he was embarrassed to see himself on TV, not following all the steps, and he went back and put all 14 steps in place? What do you think happened to his business? Year over year, so January of 2012 is when the show initially aired in the US. A year later, January 2013, his business was up 69%. So I'm telling you that the system works if you work the system. Don't invest in a franchise unless you're committed to following the system. If you follow the system, you'll find success. We live our code of values by looking to the system for correction and proposing all possible solutions if something is not working. So what happened 3 weeks after the show aired, because Bob, the franchisee of the plumber, was also quite embarrassed, and he called me up and he said, Dina, I've been thinking about this dilemma where I had technicians who didn't trust me because they believed I was not paying them fairly. He said, I didn't have a system in place to prevent that. So today I'm putting a system in place. Anytime I hire a new technician, I'm going to have them sit down with my VP of Finance and my general manager, and they're going to learn the commission structure right from the get-go. Was that a good system? You better believe it, because it eliminated the problem of people being confused about how they're being compensated. So it worked out beautifully. So when things are not going right in your business, look to the system for correction. Instead of getting mad at people, I say look to the system. There's usually a solution there. We live our code of values by operating in a responsible manner above the line. So basically there's a line here, and above it is the word accountability. We want people to be accountable. Below the line are things like shame, because we all make mistakes and sometimes we're ashamed and we won't admit to our mistakes. Blame, sometimes we're pointing the finger at other people. And justification, sometimes we just justify why we didn't get something done. Well, we don't want to hear it. We want people to own it and be responsible. So let's see what happens at the end of the episode. The boss shows up as the boss, right? And the contributors, the employees, or in this case the franchisee, goes, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was the CEO of the Dwyer Group. Here's what happened with Brock, the franchisee.
In a year and a half, Brock, you've really done well. But you really weren't all about the 14 steps.
It's not something I usually follow myself.
That's not something, and really give them a try. If you've never tried them and seen the value of trying all 14 steps, you really don't know. The slight difference those can make might just have that customer say, wow. Maybe you should just give that a try.
Trying to do my best here. It's kind of hard to know exactly how to respond to something like that. I think the 14 steps that Dina mentioned, I think it was a fair comment, but you're never doing everything perfect all the time. Anytime you have an opportunity for improvement, you want to give it a try.
So do you think Brock operated in a responsible manner by the line there? Absolutely. He's basically saying, I need to give it a try. I did not ever give it a try, and I need to now. And he's so thankful that he did, because his business is booming. It's doing terrific. Next, we live our code of values by communicating honestly and with purpose. I also was surprised that I'd be meeting with a female frontline professional with Mr. Appliance. Only about 4% of our frontline technicians are women. And in the U.S., about 7% are actually female franchise owners. In the U.K., I'm going to learn more about that, how many actual franchise owners we have that are female. But in this case, Tana was a breath of fresh air. She communicated honestly with purpose. I spent a whole day with her, and the whole day she communicated honestly with me.
Oops.
So do you like your nails?
I do. I'm not sure.
Are you willing to get them up?
I may have to if this is a job that you think I could do.
Obviously, appliance repair people don't wear painted fingernails, so she'll learn quickly to pull her hair back and cut her nails.
All right, so we finished the job.
Before we check out, I have an apartment on the property, and the ice maker the ice isn't tasting right. Do you have time to check?
Sure.
Check on that.
Okay, so Tana communicated honestly with purpose. Do you like your fingernails? She's basically telling me in a nice way that you can't have them. And the next value she also lived. We live our code of values by asking clarifying questions if we disagree or do not understand. So she went on to say, do you realize that pearls are a safety hazard? Right? So here she was training me the whole day, and all along the day she had to say things that were difficult, but were important in order for her to train me properly. So we ask our team members or franchisees, ask for clarity if you don't understand something. And don't be afraid to disagree if you've got a better idea than we do. Next, we live our code of values by never saying anything about anyone that we would not say to him or her. This is the one the employees added. I told you we met after the 90-day beeping game. The employees said there's so much waste in organizations because people don't have the courage to get face-to-face and have a difficult discussion with a person who can do something about it. Instead, they do this behind people's backs, right? And people may praise people publicly, and that's okay, but we usually don't have those constructive conversations with the right people. We usually do it with other people, and they can't fix the problem. So we encourage people to get face-to-face and have those difficult discussions in a respectful manner. We live our code of values by continuously striving to maximize internal and external customer loyalty. At the Dwyer Group, we believe our employees are customers. We believe if we take great care of our employees, they'll take great care of the customers. In our case, is the franchisee. And then we have the end user customer that the franchisee must take care of. So in the case of this customer, at the appliance job, we had to make our best effort to understand and appreciate the customer's needs in every situation. If you remember, we were checking out after the appliance work was done on the stove. She says, I have an apartment in the back. We've got a problem with the ice maker. Can you help us out? So we looked to make an effort to understand what she needed. And right away we went back and we actually took care of the problem right on site. So we wanted to make sure that we're always looking at the challenges from the customer's point of view. And then finally, our big value is, nice and loud everybody, we live our code of values by having fun in the process. Let's try that again. We live our code of values by having fun in the process. Maybe I wasn't saying it right. Fun in the process. So as leaders, and I would say, I don't know you, but I would say everyone in this audience is a leader. If you influence anyone in your lives, whether it's a child, which we have some sons and fathers here, or whether it's a peer, or somebody else that you spend time with, we're all leaders. And as leaders, we've got to be willing to be vulnerable sometimes. And while on Undercover Boss, I was vulnerable in that I didn't know what jobs I was going to do, and I was awful at most of the jobs. So I'm going to share with you a really funny bonus clip that was not on the episode, so you can have a little laugh with me. Or at me, I should say.
Oh, that's kind of heavy.
It is.
Can I lay this down when I try to start it or not?
Yes, ma'am, you can lay it down.
Okay.
There you
What am I doing wrong? I can't get it to squeeze.
go. You gotta squeeze a little harder.
Oh, there we go. You do this all day? Keep going. The hedging machine weighs like 40, 45 pounds. To hold it above my head was really hard. There was one point where I actually rested it on my chest. It worked. Why not take advantage of it?
I've got a little bit missed right here. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
When she was pruning the willow tree, she missed a few spots to bring this up a little bit more. She didn't really have control. I was standing back because I didn't want to lose a limb.
So he's afraid of losing a limb. So think about the cameraman, right? He's right in front of me and I'm coming after him with the hedger. The poor guy was exhausted after that. I also have a wonderful husband who likes to have fun in the process, and in preparation for the Undercover Boss journey, he spent a lot of time getting ready for this 3-second clip. So pay close attention to my husband's favorite part of the whole 45-minute episode.
Say bye.
Okay, so it's even less than 3 seconds. Let me explain. My husband trained our English Bulldog, Winston, to bark goodbye to me. And he was so proud that they actually showed that when the episode aired. I said, "That's really your favorite part?" I'm thinking, I killed myself out there doing these jobs. And he's like, "No, this is my favorite part." So we have to have fun in the process at home too, right? So just to wrap up, Don Dwyer was his best authentic self, and I have to work at being my best authentic self, and you all as leaders also have to be your best selves, right? You don't need to try to be the person beside you or the person you look up to. Learn from them, but be the best you that you can be. So one of the things that they did on this episode is they asked me before we went on the journey is, "Dina, what do you do before you go to work? What do you do when you get home from the office?" And I said, well, okay, in the morning, I wake up and I count my blessings before I ever get out of bed. I have a lot to be thankful for. Then I said I go down and I make pancakes for my son, who was 16 at the time. I even had viewers who criticized my pancakes because they were very flat. And they were right, they were very flat. And I chat over the newspaper and breakfast with my husband, and then I head to church. And this was a guy from LA, and he says, "You do what?" I said, "I head to church." He says, "Why on earth would you go to church before you go to work?" And I said, "Because I need that. I'm not here to promote my religion or my faith on any of you, but I have to be the best Dina Dwyer-Owens that I can be. And something that I need is I need that spiritual nourishment every day." So they said, "Can we follow you to church?" And I said, "Let's ask." And here's what happened.
Since an early age, my dad grounded me in my faith. I can almost hear him saying, "Dina, get out there and make a difference today."
Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you for Dina and the journey that she's about to enter into, as you be with her. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
All right,
Father.
we'll see you later.
Okay.
So one of the big lessons I learned by being very open about who I was is that the viewers appreciate transparency. The viewers appreciate that people aren't afraid to be who they really are, as long as you're respectful of other people's perspectives, right? So that was very refreshing. As a review also, when you're building a business, make sure you surround yourselves with a values-based team. Be clear about your values. You'll have greater success if you are. And then surround yourself with people that also align with your values. Then systemize and internalize those values. Maybe you already have written values, but maybe you haven't found a way to execute them. Create a system. Borrow ours if you'd like. Recite them at the beginning of your meetings at least once a week. Bring them to the top of mind and recite them. And ask your team members to really get to know the values and work hard to live them. And then finally, measure performance. I could be up here all day talking about our values, but if I'm not measuring whether or not we're living up to them, it's a problem. So we actually survey our franchisees and our employees once a year. We ask them, how are we doing on each and every one of the values? And I'm happy to report that our franchisees give us a score of about a 94 consistently. So that's an A, right? We can always get better though. We can always get better. Our employees give us about a 93. So they're a little tougher on us, but there's always an opportunity to get better. Here's the closing with Tana.
Am I getting fired?
Are you kidding me?
What are we doing?
You are amazing. So my goal going undercover was to find out how we're doing. Are we really living up to the values that my father founded this company on? Because that's my goal, is to live his dream. And you are the epitome of what Don Dwyer would have looked for in one of our team members.
Thank you.
So my mission for going undercover was accomplished. What I found was that every one of our team members that I met with cared so much about the customer, and they did know the code of values. Two of them specifically handed me the code of values card when I sat into their vehicles as we were going to the customer's home. They brought out the card and said, "You must learn these, because this is how we do business here. This is how we treat one another, and this is how we treat our customers." So it's never ending though. We have to continually work on our code of values and getting better each and every day. We heard from the viewers. About 2,000 viewers were kind enough to reach out to me within 2 weeks after the show aired, because they can find you on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. They can even phone me. It's so easy to find people through the internet today. But 2,000 people reached out, and most of them were completely positive. Here's what they said collectively: thank you for renewing our faith in corporate America. So it goes to show you that when you do good in business, good things can happen for everybody around you. And I think Undercover Boss has done a great job, but I think our code of values really resonated with the viewers. So if you don't have a clear code of values in your business today, I'd encourage you to have it, because it will differentiate you from all the other competitors that might be in your marketplace, because people don't do this. They don't have clear values and they don't execute on them regularly. They said, thank you for being transparent and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. People are looking for authentic leadership, aren't they? The world is hungry for authentic leadership, so you need to be the best you that you can be. They said it's not often you get to see a company with values and ethics. How many of you work with companies that display their values and ethics regularly? Anybody? You look around the room. Nobody's raising their hand. So why don't you set yourselves apart, right? Create your own values and then work hard to lead and live by those values. Finally, they said, thank you for renewing our hope in humanity. I had 2 gentlemen with AIDS call me to say, your episode actually inspired me to be more hopeful about my future, my life, because people are looking for good in this world. We need more good to be shared in this world. And they saw that amongst our employees and our company's core values. So in closing, I just want to thank you for being here and remind you to live rich. And if you do, something wonderful will happen. Now we've got a little